Core SEO webinar for today. I'm Harry Brooks, and I'm going to be taking us through today's presentation on, this is the second part in our series for Core SEO. Last week we talked about on-page optimization and how to get started with keywords. So we did a lot of talking about how to do keyword research and how to come up with a set of keywords and what you do with them once you have them on your website. So today we're going to take that to its next step, which is how to take those key phrases you identified from part one and do something useful with them on your website. Today we're going to cover, I'm going to do a very, very quick recap of what we talked about last week. And then we're going to go through how to build an optimized page. So I thought it would be good, instead of just showing you a slide and talking, I thought it would be good to just build a live page from scratch. So I've got it teed up, and we're going to take a blank slate and build a new page on a website and optimize it top to bottom for SEO. And we'll talk through some of those, some of the things that we're doing as we're going through it. And then at the end, I want to talk about some of the things that are a little bit more esoteric in the SEO world, things that are harder to identify as being an SEO problem, and things that might have you scratching your head. So give you some help on the technical end of things. So with that, I want to get right started. What we talked about last week, this is our little recap. There are three main components for search engine optimization. One is the keyword phrases and how to choose them. So we spent a lot of time last week talking about actually just getting your list of phrases that you want to rank for in search engines. And once you have them, then you're going to build a piece of content around those key phrases. And then after you do that, then you're going to go out there on the internet at large, on other people's websites, and get links that, when clicked, point back to your piece of content. And if you do those three things, you're going to have a much greater chance to rank in Google for the key phrases you selected. So this is kind of the triangle of search. This is the high level view of how it all works. So these key phrases, the ones we're going to use, again, this is a part of our recap, that we use a couple of tools, primarily Google Ads, but also there are other tools like SEMrush or Moz that we can use for keyword planning. But we want to find key phrases that are have a reasonable amount of traffic volume and compared to other key phrases, and also have a lower level of competition. So what we don't want are super high volume key phrases. Like, you wouldn't want to rank for you wouldn't want to try to rank for a key phrase like running shoes, because you'd be up against the behemoths of the world like Amazon and Zappos and people like that. Instead, you would want to try to do something more like 2019 Gel Keanu version 22 or something like that. Because this stat right here, 96.54% of all search queries in the US have fewer than 50 searches a month. So what that tells us is that we want to be here in this long tail and get a page of content on your website that ranks for a whole slew of related key phrases, and all of the variations of a key phrase, instead of just one specific thing. So with that, we have our key phrases, and we put them into a page, and we have to understand how Googlebot, how a crawler is going to identify that page, how the crawler is going to look at that page. So you'll hear me say, incidentally, crawler, spider, bot, euphemistically Google, they all mean the same thing. So the search engine and their programs that scan your site is known by all those different names. So the quick version on how search engines work, on how they interpret your site, is that the crawler will pick a page on your website, and it will read it really from top to bottom. It'll look at the code on your website, and it will pay special attention to the areas of text content on the site, which we're going to go through. But once it looks at that page and gets all the text elements identified, it will pick out links that are on the page and go out and grab those pages to inspect. Put it through a spam filter, and then once it has successfully scanned the entire page, it'll put it into its database where it can then be searched for and displayed as a search engine result. So that's the act of crawling, or how spiders work. And what we can do when we're building an optimized web page is take our knowledge of how crawlers work, this knowledge, and apply it to building a page. So we know that when a crawler looks at a web page, one of the first things it looks at is the page title tag. So this is usually very high up in the code of a web page, and it's something very specific that a crawler looks for because it gives the crawler really good cues, contextual cues about what the page is going to be about. So for example, if the page has a title that's 60 characters or something like that, and the title is get the best Apple related computer peripherals around, or something like that, the crawler immediately knows, because of the text contained in that title tag, that we're not talking about the fruit, but we're talking about the computers. So it's the first step, and the Google really gives a lot of weight, or at least takes a lot of relevancy cues from the title tag on a page. It also can look at the page URL and glean some cue about the relevancy of the page from that, and the body copy and the links and images. So since we know how the crawler scans the text elements of a page and interprets it and indexes those text elements into its database, we can then easily build a page that we know is going to satisfy the crawler and give the crawler everything it needs to make a really solid interpretation about what the page is about, all in an effort to get it to show up in the search engine results. So to do that, we really just have to build out the page, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to flip us over to a live page and walk you through this. So what I've got up right now is the back end of a website, and this is ashburnlifestyle.com, and we are going to construct a page from scratch. So I'm going to build this as a post, and some of you may recognize the admin side of WordPress. And if you don't have a WordPress website, that's okay. All content management systems have some similar elements. But we're a WordPress shop, and a huge chunk, I think it's like 65 or so, 70%. I think it's like 65% of all the websites out there, commercial sites, are WordPress. So don't hold me to that number, but I know it's something like that. So this should apply to most of you, or some of you at least. So what I've got here is just a blank page. And one of the things we actually talked about last week was building an editorial calendar based on key phrases, buyer personas, and where they are in the buying cycle. So we don't want to go back all through that, but suffice it to say that it works best if you plan out your content. So get a plan in mind, what you're going to write about, what the goal is of that piece of content, and what user you're writing for, and get all those things in your mind and plan it out ahead of time. That way, when you sit down to your blank slate and building a new web page, you aren't sitting there staring at it for 3 hours with writer's block, because the reality is that most of us aren't writers. So getting this content in there shouldn't be a challenge. So plan it ahead of time, have a writer do it, and then give it to you, and then you can optimize it or what have you. But definitely good to have a plan. So I've planned this out a little bit, and I've just got a little text file here with the text I'm going to update with. And what I planned out is I like to identify a few things: my page name, my SEO title, my meta description. I'm going to go through each one individually, so don't worry if you can't see this little text file well. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my main page title. And what I decided to do was, we talked a little bit last week about best happy hour in DC, or we used that as an example in a couple of keyword searches that we were doing. So since we can modify the Ashburn Lifestyle website, I thought, okay, well, we could use a really good page about best happy hour in Ashburn. Kind of the same thing, just on a slightly smaller scale. So that's what we're going to base this on. So it's just for context, the key phrase, that the kind of the primary seed word, the primary key phrase that we're going for is best happy hour in Ashburn. So based on our lessons, we want lots of different variations of that phrase to be used, so that Google will hopefully rank this page for all of those variants. Instead of just one, we're going to use lots of different twists and turns of best happy hour in Ashburn, so that if somebody types in best bar or best after work in Ashburn, best after work specials in Ashburn, something like that, all those myriad choices you could use in that long tail, we want to rank for. So that's what we're going for. So I've got my content planned out, and I'm going to drop my title in. Best happy hour in Ashburn, Virginia. So here's something unique, well, maybe not unique, but something that works specifically with WordPress, is that as soon as I name my page title, WordPress will create a page URL that's going to be ashburnlifestyle.com/best happy hour in Ashburn, Virginia. And that's going to be good, because that key phrase is now in the URL itself. And so that does give Google a little cue about what's going on this page. And something else that WordPress does, not every single WordPress site does this, but most themes have it styled like this, so that when you put your title of the page in, it will automatically become what's called an H1 tag, a header tag. And header tags, I'm going to take a moment to talk about these, because they're important. We know headers. When you're looking through a page of content, you've got a paragraph of text, and then maybe a headline, another header, and then a paragraph text, and then another header. Those headers are given a little bit more credence by the crawlers, because presumably something that's a headline, the text in it is important with regard to what the content on the page is. So choosing your headers on the page is important. And in HTML, we have lots of choices. Headers in HTML are denoted by H1, H2, H3, H4, H5. I don't know if there's an H6, there might be. You'll never use it, but you will use your H1. And that's going to be the top primary headline in your page of content. And to the extent possible, we want to try to keep headers on your page hierarchically organized. So sometimes I've come across this a few times, where a designer will have a page built, and this top headline on the page will be styled as an H2, as a one tier under the top level headline or header tag. And while Google does a pretty good job at interpreting that and knowing, okay, this is the headline on the page, it's the first text, and it's in big bold letters, so this is the primary header, it's best to make it easy on the crawler and denote it as an H1. And then under that, if you have a sub headline, make that an H2. And if you have a sub headline, make that an H3. Just try to keep them hierarchically organized. I rarely find any content on the many sites that we manage that require H3 tags, or even beyond that. So you really don't need those farther levels. An H1 or an H2 is what you're going to need, and I'm going to show you how to implement them. But for now, we've just got our headline, and WordPress and this theme, thankfully, automatically turns this into an H1 tag, which is great, because that's the top content on the page, first thing Google sees. I also want to make a quick kind of semantic note that you'll hear me call this the page title, and it is the page title, not to be confused with the title tag, which is something very specific to the page for SEO, which we're going to get to in a second. So first, we start with our primary headline, the page name, and then I'm going to grab all of our page content. So I've got my content already ready, had it all written up, and I'm going to drop it right into the main body area of our sample page here. So now I've got all this text, and in the majority of cases, if people don't have, if a website administrator doesn't have an SEO background, or if it's just a business owner doing this on their own, that's pretty much the beginning and end of it. They will hit publish and you're done. You have a page of content. But what we need to do it from an SEO seat is to go back through this content and make sure it's optimized. So a lot of times it kind of sounds like a load. If you hear somebody say, "Yeah, we've got to optimize that content," because it's kind of, in my opinion, overused. But the reality is that it really does need to be optimized, because if you just leave your text alone and you don't make little tweaks, you could have a really great piece of content that is just missing some simple things that would make a crawler give it much more attention. And I'll point those out as we're going through it. So remember, our key phrase that we're targeting is best happy hour in Ashburn, Virginia. So it's important to get as many relevancy cues you can get in the first paragraph or first sentence or two of body copy. And you don't want to repeat your key phrase in the first sentence of body copy, because then you're going to look spammy. The crawler sees the headline where your most important key phrase is, and then if it sees a repeat of that in the first sentence of body copy, it's going to look maybe a little bit spammy. So you don't want to be exactly like that, but you still want to give matching relevancy to it. So here, this is a good example, Ashburn Lifestyles. So you've got Ashburn, obviously. Pleased to present our list of best happy hours. So here we've just got best happy hours. Our community, blah, 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 blah. And then I added this because this is a clever way you can use something, a mechanism sort of like this. Have you driven down Waxpool Road lately? Well, this is just a reference to a street that's in and near Ashburn. And if you're from the area and you've driven down there and you've seen the giant data centers that are popping up like crazy, you know what I'm talking about. But the point in having this here is that this references a road that Google's going to know about, and it's going to place this Waxpool Road with Ashburn, and of course it's in the context of best happy hours, which is in that first sentence of body copy. So what we're trying to do in the first sentence is just to solidify to a crawler and to users what the page is about. And in this case, it's about best happy hours, and it's also about Ashburn. And so we have some more text on the page. We like to get lots of variations and permutations of the phrase that we're after in here. So one of the things you're going to notice in all this text is that there are lots of little changes. So here's best happy hours again, written. Thirsty people, best find the watering hole that may best suit you. All those things provide these cues. Again, just an easy example is to tell Google that this is Apple the computer, not Apple the fruit. This is happy hours in Ashburn, Virginia, the one that's near the Waxpool Road, not the one that's in Tennessee or wherever. So just like header tags are given a little bit more credence when a crawler is looking at the page and trying to interpret it, bullet lists or unordered lists and ordered lists are also just given a quick extra look by search engines. So if you have some key phrases that are malleable, like best happy hour in Ashburn, Virginia, sprinkle some of those variations into an unordered list, and it makes the page better, makes it stronger. So here, our list, we've got 5 bullet points, must be in Ashburn, Virginia. Well, that's a no-brainer. Adult drink specials, that's kind of a different way to say happy hour. Food specials, this is related to it. Size of the bar area here, we're just making sure we get these phrases that are very closely related, all in these important areas. And unordered list is one of those areas. So here we have a little set-off phrase. Top spots is a nice euphemism for best, and happy hour in Ashburn. And here I did not include Virginia. So what I've done is I've included a bunch of content here, and presumably these would be about the bars or restaurants that we've picked. And I'm going to show you what to do and what not to do when you're really trying to optimize this content. So this right here should not be clear text. It should be a header tag. So we've got our H1 way up here, which is the primary headline. And then we've point list here, which is great. You could even bold, set to bold or strong, top spots for happy hour. And that would help, again, bring that phrase more relevancy. And then we get to our next headline. We don't want a primary headline. We don't want an H1 because H1s are really reserved for that big top, this is what the page is about kind of a thing. Instead, we want an H2 here. So what we're going to do is highlight it and go to our change a block style and click heading. And we can choose from heading 2, 3, or 4 in this theme. So this is now H2. So now when the crawler is looking at this page top to bottom, it sees H1, best happy hour in Ashburn, Virginia. And then it sees a bunch of content. Ashburn lifestyle, best happy hours, Wax Pool Road, thirsty people, bars, Harry's Bar and Grill, top spots for happy hour. Okay, this is clearly about happy hours and bars and restaurants, and it's clearly about Ashburn, Virginia. And Harry's Bar and Grill, Google will know this also because of Google My Business, is definitely a bar in Ashburn. So it's not really, I made it up. But so for we want that to be an H2 tag because that's going to set it off and bring some more relevancy. So here's what I did with this text. One of our favorite bars is Harry's Bar and Grill, located right at the intersection of Glasspool Road and Smithswich. So I did this again for the exact same reason. Adding these words of these street names is great. It makes it very, very clear that this is a place and here's where it is, and it's in this geography. Something else you can do that I didn't even think of until right the second is that we could even embed a little map from Google Maps or from Google My Business right here into the page to give directions to it. And that would make the combination of places and type of place, the best happy hour, it would really bind them together even stronger for this optimized page. So, but having the text of the street names here is probably enough. It is enough. I've also included the address, which is also a good addition because it's got that zip code and all of this stuff. You know how Google is, let's just say intrusive, for lack of a better word. Google knows all of these places. It knows all the zip codes because it has Google Maps and Google My Business. It puts all of that together in its evaluation of a given page to understand what it's about and then serve it up for a specific search query. So adding these cues in here is super important. Down here, we focused on another unordered list and listed some things that are going to just really hammer home those relevancy cues. Now, I've been asked a lot of times by clients about linking out. So linking from your site to some other site. And a lot of people are hesitant to do that because I've heard lots of things, but the most common reason I don't want to do that is because I've got somebody on my site. I don't want to send them away. You know, I'm going to lose that visitor. And that might be true, but not if you approach it the right way. First, you obviously don't link out to competitors. But Google expects experts to link to other experts. So if I'm presenting myself on this page, editor of Ashburn Lifestyle, I'm presenting myself as an expert on best happy hour in Ashburn, it makes perfect sense for me to link to some Washingtonian article, you know, Washingtonian.com. That's best burgers in Ashburn or best burgers in DC or Northern Virginia or whatever. It makes perfect sense for me to do that. Now, a user who comes to my site because they typed in a search query, best happy hour specials in Ashburn, if they see a link for best burgers, fine, let them click it. That might be some ancillary thing, but the point is that Google definitely expects experts to link to other experts. So don't be afraid to link off of your site to others. In fact, using some of our SEO tools, we'll even get a flag that says there are no outbound links on this page. So even the SEO tools these days are built in with evaluation mechanisms that will look for outbound links and ding you if you don't have any. So just make sure they're non-competitive but very, very relevant, and you'll be just fine. Don't hesitate to link out. And then of course a link to the establishment will also be good. So here you've got don't do this. So don't do this. Don't make this an H4 when you don't need to. That makes the user experience no good, because now you've got a big header and a little header that it just looks sloppy. So you want to keep your pages nice and neat, and you're not hierarchically organized anymore. Now you've gone from an H1 to an H2 to an H4. It doesn't make sense. Even though, just for the book, Google will see this and not probably care so much. But it's just one little thing that leads to the quality of a page that is too easy to do not to do it. But don't do this. And you've seen websites that are similar to this, I'm sure. That if you're looking for the best happy hour in Ashburn, here's the best happy hour in Ashburn for you. At the best happy hour in Ashburn, you'll get the best drinks at the best happy hour in Ashburn. Call or stop by the best happy hour in Ashburn. This is just spammy junk. And we used to encounter this type of thing a lot more a few years ago. Certainly in the early days, in the early 2000s, we came across this a lot more. But it's still there, and it's spam. Google knows it's spam. Users know it's spam. It's just bad. Just don't do it. Just the idea is, sure, include your target key phrase text, and then write naturally. And when you write naturally, all those little variations and permutations of the word and little offshoots of the word that mean tangential things, they're all going to emerge naturally. So, things like craft cocktails and bar specials and local craft beers and even best burgers, all those things are going to appear naturally if you just do it naturally. So my point here is, try to write for your users. Don't write for the bots. So even though we're organizing our content and presenting our content in a way that we know is going to satisfy the bots and the crawlers, the content itself, the words that you're choosing, should really provide great value to your users. And if you do that, you're going to be satisfying both. So just a quick note of what not to do there. So as we go down the page, we would, of course, change this and make it our H2. And we'd go through and do the exact same thing we did here for each of the other sections of content that I dropped in here. And these are just placeholder pieces of content. So that's going to bring us to the end of your article. And Google will like longer content, just in general. Shorter content is okay if it makes sense and you don't need it to provide the value to your users that you're trying to get across. If the page can be presented to a user in 150 words and that's all you need to get across, fine. That's okay. But in general, if you're trying to craft a piece of content and you're doing it with SEO in mind, longer is usually better, as long as it's providing value, as long as it's not a bunch of redundant junk. So longer is better. An easy rule of thumb is to shoot for about 500 words of content. If you're building a new page, I'd rather see content 800 words or 1,000 words even. And there have been studies in the past that have shown big, huge posts or pages that have 2,000 words on them or 2,500 words on them that are filled with videos and expert quotes and sound files and headers and lists and downloadables and infographics and all that stuff. These massive blog posts that they do really well. They're not always the most reasonable thing to put together. They take a lot of time and effort. So for most of us, building a page, if you can shoot for 500 words to 800 words in that kind of ballpark, and you go through this process of optimizing it, you're going to be just fine. What we don't really want to see is just a bunch of 300-word, low quality, text only unoptimized posts because it looks junky. It doesn't provide any much value, very much value, and it just doesn't look good to the crawlers either. So that's about the length of this. But I want to talk about the words we choose here to finish up. We kind of want to wrap this up using the same techniques we did in the very beginning. At the beginning up here, you'll recall that we wanted to highlight our best word and then early on establish some good relevancy cues, Waxpool Road, Ashburn, best happy hours, very quickly for crawlers. And we kind of do the same thing down here. The only difference is that we want to reiterate what the page is about without actually saying best happy hour in Ashburn. So something like this. You know, there are so many fantastic restaurants in and around Ashburn. We're sorry we couldn't list them all. Our favorites are here, blah, 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 blah. If you've been to a fantastic happy hour nearby, this is a really good key phrase because it means the same thing. And people actually search a lot using the word nearby or near me. So this is a really good little phrase that means the same thing. And that's a great way to wrap it up. And the last thing I want to show you for this example is if you are taking comments or allowing comments on your particular website, if you ask for them, you'll get more. So it's always a simple little thing to do, you know, to ask. You can even make that its own little paragraph. Just say, hey, if you know something that we don't, or we missed something or overlooked an obvious one, let us know. Put it down here in the comments. And I'm sure you've come across that before. So now we've got a couple other finishing elements we've got to do. I didn't have an image in here yet, but we need to add an image for sure. Just a big long string of text is no good for anybody. So I'm going to add an image. And you can add lots of images. Images are always good. And I've picked one that makes sense, but what the challenge here, I'm going to upload it for on the screen. The challenge here is that Google can't see, robots can't see images. They can't interpret these pixels. Well, not yet anyway, not in any meaningful way, not at scale. So instead, what we do is we provide what's called alternate text. And this is an element of an image that WordPress makes it really easy for us to include. Alternate text is text that is inserted into the image HTML. So when Google is crawling that page, they encounter the HTML for the image and it doesn't know what the image is about, but instead it can see, oh, here's the alt text. This is what that image is about. So in the alt text, I don't want to duplicate exactly the key phrase that we're after, but I'm going to write something similar. So you can hear I'm modifying the alt text of this image, and I'm going to do something like, this is the science part of SEO. There's no art to this. I just want to find a variation of best happy hour in Ashburn, Virginia. And I'll do something like top happy hour picks around Ashburn, something like that. And now what's going to happen is this text is now part of this image HTML as it appears on the page. And so that again is one more thing. So now we're going to get all the way down to our the core SEO features of this. And we're using a plugin called Yoast, which is we use on all of the sites that we manage. And Yoast allows us to modify our SEO title and our meta description. The SEO title is, we've talked about this a few times. This is where, this is part of the head information of an HTML document. And it's one of the first things Google will see when it's crawling the page. This is not visible on the page at all, except in the tab. So the little text that appears in a tab in your browser, that will be the title tag. So here, I've already prepared my title tag. When I wrote my content, the SEO title is right here. So I'm just going to copy it out of my prepared document and go down here and paste it in. Now the plugin that we're using gives us a green line because you want your title tag to be kind of within the tolerances that Google likes. You've probably done a Google search and seen a text string in the blue link. That's the title tag. And then it's truncated. It's got a dot, dot, dot. It's an incomplete idea. And that will happen if you add too many words. See how it went red? That's because you're outside of the tolerance that Google generally likes. So we're going to keep that. Usually, if you keep it around 60-ish characters with spaces, you're going to be fine. So that's the kind of rule of thumb. A little bit longer is okay. A little bit shorter is okay. Keep it right around there, and you'll be just fine. Similarly, the meta description. The meta description is often used by Google where you do a keyword search. You see the search engine result page come up. You'll see the headline, the blue clickable link, and then the text underneath it. Google calls that a snippet. The snippet of text underneath each link in the search engine result page is often the meta description. A very, very common SEO mistake we see is not to include a meta description in your site, in which case Google will just pick a random, well, not random, but it'll pick a string of text from the body copy of your web page and display it there. So I'm sure you've all seen also a search engine result where you have the blue clickable link headline and then a snippet of text underneath it that's just like a bunch of address information or some model numbers or something that doesn't really make sense. And that's because the owner of that website didn't have a good meta description noted here. So I've already prepared one, and I'm going to copy it off of my doc, my prepared document, and just drop it in there. And again, with our green line, you want your meta description to be something like 150 characters with spaces, and you want it to be a complete sentence, a complete thought. So if you go to Google and you do a search for some key phrase, you may see a terrible snippet under a listing, and you may see a really good one. Even if the listing is number 2 or 3, if it has a really compelling meta description, you may very well click it. So, for example, if you typed in best happy hour in Ashburn, and the first listing was, Frank's Beverages or something, and then underneath it, it listed like model numbers or tap serial numbers or something like that. Just a big long string separated by commas. It's okay. What's that? And then the number 2 listing is for the best happy hour in Ashburn. Look no further. You're going to click the number 2 listing every time. So that's how you can beat a number 1 listing, even if you're not ranked above it in a given search query. So it's really important to have these. And one other thing that's noteworthy is that if the key phrase that a user types into the search engine matches the key phrase that's in the title tag, or pardon me, the meta description tag, Google will bold the meta description tag, those words in the meta description. So now if a user goes to Google and types in best happy hour in Ashburn, Virginia, if best happy hour in Ashburn, Virginia is included in your meta description and Google displays that on the page, those words will be in bold. So it even compels the user to click that listing even more. So in that way, you can really optimize your listing to show up in Google. It is noteworthy that Google does not use the meta description for ranking. That is, this won't give you any ranking factors. Google doesn't use this to figure out the relevance of your page. This is not a relevancy cue right here. All this is to be used for compelling a user to click your listing. That's why we use this. So it's important. So I actually, this is all done here, and I'm looking over here at my Yoast SEO plugin, and it says SEO analysis needs improvement. I don't know why it's doing that, because this is a great page. So I'll have, maybe in part 3 next week, I'll go through this this tool and see what Yoast is saying, and we can address that. But to recap, we've got our page name, which is ashburnlifestyle.com/best happy hour in Ashburn, Virginia. We've got first sentence or 2 of body copy reiterates what the page is about. We've got a good image that has alt text that matches something very similar to what we're trying to rank for. And then we've got lots of text, call it 500 to 800 words. I think this one's probably closer to 700 or 800 words, where we're using lots of different variants of the target key phrase. And we've got lots of things like bold text, unordered lists, a good hierarchically organized set of header tags, links out to other expert sites. We're not using any spam or repeating words over and over again. And we're concluding with some good, valuable information that a user can use that also encourages them to participate and reiterates that this is about a fantastic happy hour nearby. So that's the page. Once you publish it, you're good to go. That's it. You've built your optimized page. So I'm going to flip back here to our presentation and take you through a couple last minute points, and then we'll open things up for questions and wrap it for the day. So there are some things that you'll run into with optimizing pages, especially on WordPress. And there are some things that you should just do that will, for most people, will keep everything buttoned up. And these are, I'm talking specifically about technical issues that might come up for SEO. The biggest, easiest thing to do that will prevent your site from getting messed up is to keep everything updated. So that means all of the plugins on your site and the WordPress version in particular, keeping them updated. The next item is keeping your services billing. And this is kind of, this is kind of a twofer. These two things go hand in hand. So don't go into the back end of your WordPress site and start clicking update without a little forethought, because that's how sites break. And then probably once a month, I'll get a call or notice, hey, my site's down. What happened? Well, I was doing blah, blah, blah. I tried to update this. Okay, so we got to go back in and fix it. Quickest way to crash a site is to update something without making sure that it's compatible. And it really is not that hard, but you got to know what to do in the event that happens. So keeping your services billing means your good hosting service that is set up to have backups and good restore points. That's why these things are so tightly related, because if you do something that you weren't sure about and your website crashes or it's white screening, at least you can go into your hosting account and restore it for backup. We also see websites go down, happens a few times a year, where a site will go down and we'll find out that the domain registration expired, or the hosting registration expired, or the digital certificate expired, or something expired. So really, you just got to make sure that these things are kept up to date. If something breaks on your site, like you get to work one day and your homepage has this image is down here and all of the text is gone, and then it's a string of weird, misaligned images because something broke. Unless you know HTML, it's probably not a great idea to try to get in there and fix it. You might actually make it worse. So that's when, if there's any doubt, just get help. Just call. Usually things like that are not terribly complicated fixes. So when to get help happens, obviously, if your site crashes, but common issues are when your title tags won't appear. So in the live sample that we did, you saw where I entered my SEO title. Sometimes you do that and you publish the page and then the title just doesn't appear. It's a default title or one that you didn't put in, and it's very frustrating. What has happened in that case is the theme itself has conflicting titles. So you're putting one into Yoast, but the theme itself is overriding it with something that it has baked into it. So you have to get a developer or somebody who knows some PHP and HTML just to go modify the theme so that it only calls the Yoast title tag that you put in, not the one that's built into the theme. Canonical tags, this is a technical issue that's, outside the scope of this. It's a little bit more advanced, but suffice it to say, a canonical tag can make a page on your website if the canonical tag is not right, it can make the page on your website not appear in search. If Google doesn't think that the page is the most important page about a given topic on your website, it will not show it. So canonical tags are configured in our Yoast plugin and during setup. So when you install your Yoast plugin, you'll be walked through this setup and you can set your canonical tags then. But if you have an error with them, usually it's a good idea to get help, because somebody has to know what they're doing in order to get it set up. Structured data. You may have heard any of us talking about schema tags or structured data. The quick version of what structured data is it takes a piece of content and it wraps it in a certain type of HTML so that Google knows exactly what it's about. And here in our example, this is structured data for a restaurant and for an address. So in this sample, what we're doing is we're taking something as simple as an address and wrapping it in these special tags, these schema tags. And this tells Google when the crawler hits this and it's examining what this is, it says, oh, this isn't just an address. This is the address of a restaurant. And it's an address of a business restaurant called Dave's Steakhouse. And this is the website of this that's associated with this business, which is a restaurant, which is at this address. It just tells Google very, very specifically that this is a business entity and this is the type of entity it is. It makes Google's ability to crawl information and then index it much easier. So one of the first things we do when we're optimizing a website for a client is to set up and install structured data for the important data types on the site. But if you get a structured data error on some report or in your in any form of analytics, unless you know how to modify the code, it's not something you will likely do on your own. Just get help. Two other instances where you should just pick up the phone and call a developer is if you go to your computer one morning and you go to your website and it's white, just a white screen. It's kind of like the old Microsoft blue screen of death. The white screen means something bad has happened to your WordPress site and it needs to be fixed. Or if you find you're reading through a page on your website and you see a weird link for a pharmaceutical stuck into content and you're like, how did that get there? And it's because your site was hacked. So those are the things that are common that can come up, and really you just pick up the phone and call somebody who knows what they're doing to get it fixed. But for most people who are business owners or self-managing websites, just keep everything up to date and make sure you have a good restorable backup copy all the time. And that comes down to hosting. So pick a good hosting company for that. The key takeaways from today, get those keywords and make sure you know where to put them. That's page title, page headline, meta description, body copy, alt text, and outbound links. And make sure your keyword choices are lots and lots of different variations of that target key phrase. Link to other optimized content on your website and also out to other experts. And get that content published, and then watch your analytics to see how it performs, and keep doing that over and over and over again forever. Next week, we are going to get into linking, how to link, how to get links, why they matter, how to get them, and all the elements that are surrounding linking and why it's such an important part of SEO. Hope you found it helpful. Thank you all very much for your time and attention. We'll see you next time.